Welcome back to CBS This Morning. This is a look at workers removing the Johnny Reb statue this morning that's set on top of an 80-foot Confederate monument in downtown Norfolk, Virginia. The mayor says the statue will be relocated out of concern for public safety. Protesters across America are tearing down and damaging memorials that they say honors racist figures from history. Chip Reed is in Richmond, another Virginia city where Confederate monuments are under attack. Chip, good morning to you. I know this has been an issue there for years.
Oh, for a very long time. Of course, Richmond was the capital of the Confederacy. So there are monuments like this one. This one is to Robert E. Lee all over this town. Politicians have spent years talking about doing something about it, maybe bringing them down, putting them in a museum, or maybe just adding some context. But this week, protesters said, "We are tired of waiting."
Richmond residents celebrated Thursday at the graffiti-covered and long controversial statue of Confederate General Robert E. Lee.
All that down below is hundreds of years in the making. And all the emotion and all the energy and all the passion that created that, it'd be a shame to wipe that away.
Very empowering, not just black people, for white people as well, who wants change. You know what I mean?
That call for change has hit the city's monuments hard, with protesters bringing down the statue of Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederacy, and landing Christopher Columbus in a local lake. Protesters took action across the country, tearing down memorials to the country's racist history, leading some officials to demand permanent removal.
The American people know these names have to go.
In Congress, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's call to do away with Confederate statues in the halls of the Capitol met Republican resistance. A bipartisan proposal advanced in the Senate would begin the process of renaming about 10 military bases that honor Confederate officers. President Trump and some Republican allies spoke out in opposition.
The purpose was to erase from history, erase every person and name and event not righteous enough, and to cast those who would object as defenders of the cause of slavery.
Why do we want to name or venerate people who fought to enslave other human beings? That's all we're saying.
Leisha Brooks at the Southern Poverty Law Center has helped identify more than 1,700 Confederate symbols still standing across the country and argues their removal is a powerful symbol.
It's an opportunity for us to move forward and show members of the African-American community, we hear you, we understand, we're doing something to be actively anti-racist.
We've struggled to deal with this country's tortured racial history.
University of Richmond professor Julian Hayter advised Virginia to remove the memorials.
We only generally tend to come around and discuss this country's racial problems in instances where there's trauma involved. And perhaps we might not be here if we were willing to have these discussions when things seem to be going normally.
The Southern Poverty Law Center says about 140 Confederate symbols have been removed since 2016, and Anthony, that pace is now accelerating greatly.
Yeah, the momentum is building, Chip. You mentioned in your piece the push to rename military bases around the country that are named for Confederate war heroes. Where does that stand, and why right now?
Well, I tell you why, because of so much that is going on right now. But this is really surprising. It is really gaining some steam, and the idea has been around for a very long time. It's being pushed primarily by Elizabeth Warren, liberal Democrat of Massachusetts. You might think Republicans aren't going to agree with that, but Republicans on the key Senate committee have already said they'll go along. There are a couple of opponents, but it appears to be moving ahead. This effort would rename 10 military bases. Take a look at them. They include Fort Benning in Georgia, Fort Hood in Texas, and Fort Bragg in North Carolina, some very prominent bases. Now, the Democrats in the House strongly favor it. They say, after all, these men took up arms against the United States in favor of slavery. A big but, though. President Trump has said he will veto any effort to do this.
All right, Chip Reed in Richmond, Virginia. Thank you, Chip.